Right. Welcome to this edition of MC Connect. This is a series of webinars that we're conducting online. And the objective of our webinar series, MC Connect as we call it, is to expose all of you students to various career streams, to get you to listen in on some very interesting, engaging conversations with expert mentors. Today we have Mansi, who's going to be enthralling this vibrant audience and essentially talk about their journeys, their admission journeys, their career, that the choices that they made, and hopefully to learn and imbibe something in your own personal journey. And that's our motto. That's what we at Mentors Capital want to enable. Right. So very quickly, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you guys about what Mentors Capital does, and then I'll pass the baton on to Mansi, and Mansi is going to tell you all about her career journey. Right. So I think one of the first questions that I want to address is, what are you guys really, really worried about? I know some of you guys are probably in college, second, third year. Even if you're not, even if you've already graduated and are working, I think some of these existential questions still do exist. So, what exactly do we worry about when we are in college, when we're in school, when we're working? Well, tons of things that run through our mind, right? And I think this word cloud sort of makes that obvious. You can see that, you're worrying about whether I should go in for a post graduation right after college, or is it better to go in for that, coveted job, campus placements? Do I worry about, even when it comes to higher education, do I go in for an MBA, or do I look at masters? Do I look at technical masters? Do I look at some very, very new kind of programs, courses that are being launched, which are very topical in today's day and age? So what kind of program choices do I make? In fact, a very related question that sometimes come into your mind is, should I go in for a generalization? Should I go do an MBA, or should I go in for specialization, which means should I pick a niche field, and should I pursue a master's or a higher education there? So many such questions, with regard to job, with regard to choice of program, choice of geography. Should I study in India? Should I go pursue my career abroad? Should I pursue education abroad? How does it pan out in terms of return on investment, in terms of costs, in terms of financial aid, in terms of even jobs, and finally that coveted PR? So many questions that come to mind, and I guess that's where Mentors Capital kicks in, because I believe that the answer to all of these questions that you guys face is to speak to that right person. And when I say right person, I mean speak to somebody who's gone through that journey, right? Speak to a network of experts. That's what we have. We have a network of students, academicians, professionals who've gone to top universities across the globe. We have some who've passed out from India, the IIMs, or ISB, or some of the top IITs. And likewise, even from universities across the globe. We're talking about the London Business School, and very, very soon I'm going to show you a slide about the kind of mentor profiles we have. But yeah, I mean, I think the message I want to leave you with is that Mentors Capital has tons of expert mentors who have registered on the platform. These are mentors who've committed to connect with students, to answer student queries, to help and handhold people who have doubts or questions or conundrums in their journey, right? And this commitment means that a student can then come on the platform, explore various mentor profiles, find a profile or a person who fits your requirements. I'm from commerce, I'm from engineering, I want to pursue a master's in economics, I want to do an MBA abroad, I want to study design thinking, I want to go in for robotics. Well, decide either on the basis of your background, or on the basis of what you want to study, or maybe on the basis of where you want to go, which country, which geography, which university, right? And these are some of the filters you can use to explore mentors, and eventually the idea is to connect with them on a one-to-one basis, right? Remember, these are mentors who are willing to commit, obviously schedules permitting, and so we arrange, we ensure that those connections happen. Yeah. Well, what kind of mentors? I did say I'll tell you very quickly about the kind of mentor profiles we have. Well, suffice to say that we have experts who are some who have passed out from the top schools, some who are teaching or are faculty members in these top schools. Obviously, some after passing out have gone on to do great things. And so, sometimes I like to say this quite often. It's, you get a different perspective when you connect with somebody who's just passed out, from higher education, maybe 2 or 3 years after a master's or an MBA. But a very different experience comes from that same person 5 years, 10 years down the line, because the depth of perspective is much more, and you get an idea of the kind of trends and the future that the industry or that sector is going to see. So there goes. We have mentors of across all these profiles, and finally, yeah, I think when it comes to some of these selections, admissions, well, we've got people who sat on admission panels, right? People who really understand from the other side of the table what adcoms look for, what admission committees look at, right? So yeah, an abundance of expert mentors. Well, I guess what you're waiting for is simply how to connect. Well, these are the kind of packages that services that we offer. At the very least, I think, and I think the flagship offering for our website is the personalized mentorship. Well, connect with a mentor directly on a one-to-one call, on a one-to-one conversation, and clarify everything that you need. At the other end is, well, if you come in with a specific requirement in mind, something like, hey, I want to consult them about my college application. I want to ask them which colleges, which schools to apply to, maybe get help with even the essays, or maybe you want to help, want to seek our help with test preparation. Well, we've got experts who've been, training students for the CAT, GMAT, SAT. I myself am a trainer, for the past decade or so. So I think once you visit our website, you'll find that we've got everything that you probably need on your journey once you've decided to apply to a school, right? So I guess my parting statement will be, get started, guys, because all of this month we've got the first session for your connection with any mentor, completely free of cost. Yes, that's right. Free connection, free conversation with any mentor of your choice on our website. Go avail of that offer right away. Go check out the kind of mentor profiles we've got, and start your journey today. Well, parting words. There are many such forums. I know people ask me all the time, right? How is this different from many of those forums where you can make connections and you can have conversations and seek clarity? Well, for one, I think we're curating the list of mentors on our website very carefully. I'm making sure that the experts that come on board bring a different perspective and are willing to devote that kind of time and energy, mentoring or counseling you. We very avowedly take a mentor first, approach, where I think the mentor is the guy, is the person who should be leading the conversation, who should be leading the consulting, and obviously keeping in mind students, right, and their needs. Well, in the past, I know that some of you probably don't have exposure to our institution, but let me assure you that when we deal with a mentor and looking at his application journey, our focus is entirely on, not on fluffing your application to the college, not on creating something which is not you, but rather to get under your skin and understand what you stand for and how best to represent you in that college application or in that college interview, right? And so we keep a very student centric approach. And obviously, I think the one that concerns you most is the fact that our conversion rates are very high when it comes to schools in India or abroad. I think 4 and 5 students make it through their dream college once they've consulted us in their journey. So that's a big vote of confidence, and I assure you, it's going to work for you as well. Right. Well, what is MC Connect? Well, our initiative, right now is to reach out to college students of multiple backgrounds, and essentially give back to this community by inviting speakers from multiple diverse fields, right? And this is the second edition. In the last webinar, we had Kashmira coming in and talking about how her journey went from studying economics, studying commerce, to studying at the London School of Economics, and finally how she landed up at the RBI and the kind of exciting work she does there. So I think the objective of this series of webinars is to expose you to different success paths, and to also listen in on mentor insights, right? And to assure you that, hey, if you speak to a mentor, besides their perspective, you can also ask questions and get clarity, right? So on that note, I'm gonna dive into today's session. Well, today's session is titled "My MBA Experiences in India and Abroad." Mansi, who's our speaker for today, is a senior associate at Strategy and this is a PwC strategy consulting firm that's based out of Dubai. Mansi is a very excitable, mentor. She's had a very fascinating journey of first having gone to the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, which is where she spent, about 4 5 months. And before she could get her feet dirty there, she got an admit from INSEAD. That's one of the top global B schools, and an opportunity obviously that she could not pass on. And so, lo and behold, 5 months later, she found herself at INSEAD with a in a global audience. I think without taking much of your time, I'm gonna ask Mansi to quickly join us. Mansi, if you're listening in, could you please come on?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Could you switch on your video, Mansi?
Yes, I think it's disabled. I'm not able to turn it on.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Hi.
Hi, Mansi.
Sorry, I had to join from my phone, guys.
Right. Okay. Just to let the others know, Mansi is in the middle of a half work day as well.
No. It's a Friday and sorry, it's a Saturday. We're not working today. It's all good.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Mansi. Well, what can I say? Your profile itself is quite fascinating. But tell us. Maybe we could start from that. From where I left off.
Yeah.
ISB and then INSEAD. Tell us how that happened.
Yeah. I'll start from. I think I understand the audience is mostly from their undergrad right now, right? A lot of people are doing undergrad, so I'll start slightly earlier. I graduated with business economics from Delhi University, so I think the interest in business was quite early on. I think the thought of MBA kind of was plotted back in the day. It's exactly this stage of life when you start thinking about MBA. It's also a lot of the Indian pressure of, you need to do an MBA. It's the next step in your career. It's the way to get like a better job, XYZ. So yeah, that's when I started thinking about MBA. But that time, I think my mind was very closed off in terms of, I think the only option I saw was CAT.
Mhm.
And so I went to CAT coaching, and it didn't last too long. I got my first job with Standard & Poor as a financial research associate, which went okay, but I wanted to look into doing something more exciting. I took the CAT again, and I got into IIM Shillong at the time, I remember. And then I also got into one of the startups that was based in the Netherlands, and they were looking for their first employee in India. So I was like, what better way to learn business than actually, take a company and let's see how to grow it in a region without having any experience. So that's when I joined Crowdy News. After about 2 years of working with a startup, I realized that the itch to do an MBA was even more aggravated, but it also made a lot more sense in terms of understanding exactly how business worked. It made sense after I had about like 4 or 5 years of experience of what I should be doing now. And that's when I started applying to schools. And I wasn't very confident about making it, honestly. So I was taking it step by step in applications. And then I applied to ISB. I got through. I think when I got through, I was like, okay, let's apply to INSEAD as well. So just a quick point, I did not complete my MBA at ISB. I was there for about 4 5 months. It was in Mohali, the Mohali campus. I was there for about 4 5 months. I got through INSEAD. I dropped out, so I went to study at INSEAD, the France campus. I know it's back in the day when I was in my undergrad, I don't think I was too familiar with what INSEAD was, I'll be honest. It came in much later with like speaking to more people of, the kind of business school that it was. And I was super excited about going there. So yeah, that's a quick summary, so to say, of how life changed from 2013 to 2019.
Absolutely. In fact, I did want to step back and ask you from right at the start of your journey. You're studying business economics, you're in DU. Everybody's thinking about the cat, and so were you. Any thoughts at that point in time? You must have considered, should I work? Should I do an MBA? Right? Because that's the class of question,
Absolutely.
right? Because I mean, at one end, this is the way that we compare. We say, at one end is the fact that, hey, if I gain some work experience, I think you derive a lot more value out of your MBA, out of your management
Yeah.
program. But at the
Yeah.
other end
Yeah.
is the fact that once you start working, you can't prepare for CAT, GMAT, and some of these
Yeah.
entrance exams. So what was your thought process at that stage?
Absolutely. I think my thought process was three-way. So one was, should I start working? The second was, should I do an MBA? And third was, should I do a master's in economics? So that was my three-way thought process in 2013 when I was graduating. And honestly, it all worked out. I think it's important to definitely, as you said, like these kind of platforms of where you speak to people. It's very, very important to speak to people who are doing what you're thinking of doing maybe 5 years later, 7 years later, 10 years later, 2 years later, just to get perspective. uh, you will eventually make a decision that you have to make, but you will just be more confident about making that decision. And sometimes, Anand, it's just leap of faith, right? You're just going to think like, I got a job. I said, okay, fine. It was the first company on campus, and I was like, okay, it's just luck. I've gotten placed, and it seemed like a good job at the time, and I started working. But also, like during working, is it reflecting back, is it making sense right now what I'm doing? Does that am I do I want to grow further? Am I growing as an individual? Because to me that's very, very important, and that's what I started feeling like I was lacking in my first job. I felt I was not growing after a certain point, not as an individual, not as a professional.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these kind of questions really help you, when you're constantly asking yourself these questions and also putting yourself in uncomfortable spots to, what's next, because it's very easy to be complacent.
Okay, okay. Interesting that you I mean you ran us through your journey, and Masters of Economics was also a course that you considered.
It was,
Did,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
did you also have academia as a possible choice in your mind at some point?
I did, Anand, because I remember in my third year, I took like the courses that I took. I don't know if anyone here is doing business economics, but I don't know why I got excited and I took advanced econometrics and, like the advanced courses of economics when there were easier choices available. So even till now, like I feel like academia is a brilliant option. Even till date, maybe I will like, oh, can I do a PhD next, or get to teaching, because it is an interesting space to be in. But it's important to realize, if you do a master's in economics, for example, what kind of job opportunities come along. It is possible you do a master's in economics and come back to the corporate world and doing that. But if you want to get into, say, for example, development economics, right? That's very, very special. It might be really helpful. Or if you want to get into teaching, you might have to go through that path. So it was a consideration, and the corporate world took over.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, it's ironical that we're talking about academia, because I mean, the last session was pretty much, focusing on economics, but tending towards academia, less towards finance in the corporate world. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
all right. Let's move ahead. So now, so you told us you tried your hand at CAT. I mean, I guess wasn't working out. So you looked at ISB a lot more seriously. In you applied and got through in the year 2018. Is that right? So talk to us about that discovery about how is ISB different from other B schools in India, right? Because I mean, it is applying to an ISB is
Yeah.
sees different. It's oceans apart. So what was your experience with that?
Yeah, I think after a few years of working, let's see, like when you're at a certain age, your network around is mostly driven by what people around you are thinking, right? At that age, like 2016, 17, 18, we had a lot of people around our age who went to DU as well, or other, engineering schools as well, who were now taking up their journey. So I'll break it down. So after 2013, right after MBA, we had certain friends who were going to business schools,
Mhm.
and all those friends who were going to business schools were going to IIMs, because IIMs are the ones that take uh, students who don't have work experience as well, right? So, which is a fair bet. After 2, 3 years of working, you will realize the cohort that you're with most people will start looking at ISB or international schools, right? And particularly focused towards the US, because in Europe, your age and the work experience is slightly more. So that's the kind of environment you're faced with. So I think at that time we were faced with an environment where a lot of people were going to ISB, some people were going to like a couple of other business schools or trying to apply abroad. So I think it's definitely like driven by who you're speaking to, as I said before. So that's how my discovery of ISB started. I started seeing some seniors, some people who, are in different companies who were graduating from ISB and were doing really well in their lives. Um, and then just speaking to certain friends who were getting admitted at that time to ISB, and let's say like if we see CAT, yes, you have the IMABC, and then you have through GMAT, ISB is one of the best schools in India that you can get through. So I think, Anna, there was a straight answer. If you want to get a great job in India, if you don't want to go through the whole CAT process again, because I'd already gone through the process, it's a good bet. And that's how I led to the so-called discovery of ISB. But, we all knew what ISB was right from the beginning.
So I take it that you did not apply, to ISB in your college during college times, because
No,
they do
no,
have
no.
this YLP program where you can apply
Yeah.
in the pre-final year. So that's not something.
Now that you say it, I might just have. And but but I was, as I told you, I was so confused between job, MBA. I was not taking MBA too seriously at the time, or application. So I might have been rejected as well. Some, before, and this was a more serious shot, so to say.
Okay. Okay. So on the ISB application, and the way that you apply to an ISB is quite similar to the way that schools abroad, these schools abroad, consider candidature, which is, it's more of a across the board, multiple parameters that they evaluate, rather than just a CAT score like it is, the first stage at IIMs. So so we're talking about your profile, economics, and having worked at S&P, and in fact the startup as well, like you said. What do you think was the decisive factor for your admission to ISB? And what do you think tilted the scales in your favor? If I were to ask you to put your foot down and pick one, what would that be?
Pick one was my startup experience. If I really have to pick one.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think I'll be honest, I didn't have a great GMAT score for me. I didn't have, an MBB experience of like a very strong firm behind me. So I had decent recommendations, yes, but the recommendations was due to the fact that I had good work experience and I could reach out to certain people to write me a recommendation. So I think definitely, if I had to pinpoint on one factor, it was the work experience that I did. I do also believe a part of it is driven by like an overall profile, as we often hear it, right? Like, what is an overall profile? So definitely, like, your work experience is one, but what you've done outside of work, like I used to be a professional dancer before, or if I've helped in certain XYZ things in my life, what am I outside of work really, is probably the number two thing I would say that was helping me at that point in terms of, the so-called diversity of profile. I wouldn't say like just being a woman is going to help you be a diverse profile. It's very often you're like, oh, you're a woman, you'll get through. Like, it's really not only, just the gender diversity that schools look at. It's a lot more in terms of diversity that they look at. Right. So I would say that was definitely the number two factor, so to say.
Right. Interesting. And then, so when you were applying to ISB, was that the only school you applied to, or did you apply to a bunch of other?
No, Anand, I was super underconfident of where I would get through. My first school that I applied to was Cambridge.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, I was very, very underconfident. I applied to Cambridge as like, I was like, let's test the water. And I got a call back and I was shocked. And I was like, okay, I'm getting a call back. Let's now try to apply to ISB. I was taking it like one step at a time. Life happens kind of a moment. I was like, okay, now let's apply to ISB. And when I heard back from them, and when I got through it, that's the third time, I was like, okay, now let's take another step. Let's apply to INSEAD. So, yeah, so that's how, these are the three schools I applied to back in the day.
Okay. This is such a recurring theme, with all these mentor conversations that I'm having. I think something that people say all the time, people who've gone to some of the top schools across the world, right? I think applying itself is one of those unique things that you do, because most people just shy away from applying thinking, hey, I don't think my profile deserves a look in, and that's why you falter, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And I cannot emphasize on this enough that I have been told by, I remember calling a bunch of consultants as well, like because I wanted to get input of like, oh, will I get through the school? INSEAD is my dream school. Will I make it or not?
Yeah.
And I've been told like, no, I think you should apply to some other school. Sometimes face that you're not going to make it, so you shy away from applying,
Yeah.
right? It's like breaking your confidence even further. And that's what had happened with me as well. Sorry if you hear some background noise. So that's what had happened with me as well. I was put down. And the thing was, I was on the, at least for ISB, I was, I think, at par in terms of the age group, the work experience required. I was, I think, an average there for everything. But at INSEAD, for example, I was a younger age group. Like I was 26 when I went to school. So I was 25 when I was applying. Like average age at INSEAD is 29.
Right.
So, I was younger age group. I didn't have like complete international experience. I didn't have a great GMAT score. So everything was going not in my favor. So people told me, don't apply. So that's the obvious thing they'll say to you, but you have to sometimes like force yourself to look beyond this, because at the end of the day, you're going to do your MBA once, maximum twice, like me. But and you want to make the best of it, and you don't want to not apply to your dream school just because someone is telling you not to, right? So sometimes just overlooking and taking that shot is important.
Actually, I think I'll actually add on to that fact, because what tends to happen is that admission consultants and even experts that you can speak to sometimes tend to focus more on the averages, and they're not wrong in doing that, because I mean, if somebody were to come to me for advice and say, I want to apply to an INSEAD, what's a good GMAT score? I'd probably say 700 plus.
Yeah.
Then that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that a 680 doesn't get in, because the
Yeah.
individuality of your application is something that you understand better, right? And so, I mean, to all of my viewers listening in today, please make sure that you speak to the right, consult the right people, and please maintain your individuality.
Yeah, and don't have the regret of not applying. I think it's better to apply and be rejected than not apply at all and stay the rest of your life not knowing what would have happened if I would have applied. Like I told you, I was probably rejected from ISB before, and I was rejected from a bunch of places before for sure. But it's a matter of time, and everyone has their own path.
Okay. The theme of today's meeting, today's webinar, is actually to compare schools in India and schools abroad. And you've gone ahead, you spent some time at ISB, and then you went obviously and finished your MBA from INSEAD. So how would you compare ISB and a global B school like an INSEAD, right? How would you compare, and where do the two stack up?
See, they're both brilliant schools. I'll start with that. Right? They're both. I had a great time at both. I think they're both brilliant schools. They're both the best in the respective locations, so to say.
Yeah.
ISB is one of the best schools in India, hands down. INSEAD is one of the best schools in Europe and beyond now, because of course it's a more global school. So hands down, I think if you're looking at just from a perspective of like ranking, they both fit into one of the best business schools in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, I think, sorry, if I really look at it in terms of like job perspective, I think that's where things differ. If I knew very well that I want to have a successful career in India, I think ISB is a great choice, right?
Yeah.
If you're graduating from ISB, you have a great alumni network within India. You have people all across. There are going to be people who will support you, help you progress in your career. The advantage of an alumni network is that you can reach out, and you get so much opportunity after business school. When we sometimes when we are looking at applying to schools, our limit of understanding is like ranking, but what's really, really valuable is your alumni network.
Yep.
It's going to stay with you for the rest of your life, literally. So if I look at it from a perspective, ISB has a very strong alumni network in India, probably one of the best. I have so many friends who are doing amazing, and they can reach out to people to progress. Versus if I look at INSEAD, it has a very strong alumni network all around the world.
Yep.
So if I'm thinking like locations like, Dubai, for example, where I am now, or if I'm thinking Singapore, or if I'm thinking London, or certain other regions, then I'm thinking, okay, I know the alumni network is good here. I will be able to progress in my career in these geographies. If I think about INSEAD in India, for that matter, it is strong, obviously, but it's not an ISB in India, right? We are not originally from like there. There are not so many people as ISB alumni over there. And similarly, if I look at the US, there are certain US schools that have a very such strong alumni over there. So I think that's the perspective that we really need to look at of where we are seeing our career growing. Third would definitely be in terms of the kind of cohort that you want to be with. You know, they all have great, very similar courses, very, very similar courses. But of course, when you're sitting in a classroom, it's very, very impacted more than the professor of the 70 people that you were sitting with. And that's when we noticed that, at ISB, the diversity is, of course, much lower versus at INSEAD, we have about 70 to 80 different nationalities, right? So it's very, very focused on international experience, motivation, getting to know about different cultures. So I think that's also a huge, huge differentiating factor.
Okay. Interesting. And how about academics? And INSEAD, because everybody tells us that the environment in an INSEAD is mind blowing, because suddenly, especially for somebody studying from India, used to the Indian education, you land up in a cohort, with 70 nationalities. Is that it? Am I exaggerating?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, 70 odd nationalities.
That's no exaggeration.
Suddenly you're in this crowd that you have no control of, and trying to make, so that's one end of what you need to adjust to. But obviously it's a 1 year program, and most, I
10
am
months to be precise.
correct. So slightly, longer term in India, and it's different when you're studying at INSEAD. So how was academics like over there? And two, what were your choices there in the program? Did you always know you wanted to get into consulting, management consulting? Was that something as a choice that existed,
No.
As a preference before you went in, or did that just evolve and fall into place later?
Yeah. No, fair questions. In terms of academia, I like to highlight again between India and abroad, particularly ISB and INSEAD. In terms of your core subjects, they're very similar, right? ISB gets a lot of international professors. It's very, very similar. In terms of your like additional courses that you can take, your elective, so to say, it's slightly different. Being at INSEAD, and as you just pointed out, like, just being exposed to that level of nationality and that wealth of experience sitting in a classroom, because people have come from like literally like all walks of life in terms of like geography, all walks of life in terms of the amount of experience they had. I know in my study group, we were like six people in my study group. I was the youngest for sure. And there were people who were like 30, 31, 7, 8 years of experience. It's normal to have 10 years experience at INSEAD. So it's, I would say, yes, it can be overwhelming, but it's so exciting to sit in that classroom and really have, it's not a one way. And this everyone should know. MBA is not just like, oh, I need to know how to, what balance sheets look like, or I need to know what accounting is, or marketing is, or strategy is. It is really, really, really through and through. Your MBA experience is driven by the people, 100% driven by the people. And at INSEAD, what was great was, the people were, again, as I said, with so much experience in so many different cultures, that our whole growth and academic experience was driven with culture. I'll give you an example, like some of the electives that I took, for example, which you'll be shocked, like in 10 months, how much can you travel and how much can you learn in terms of experiencing stuff. Like two of my electives were, one was building business in China and building business in Silicon Valley. I would think that I would sit down in a classroom and do that, but no. We went to Silicon Valley, we went to, Y Combinator's office, we went to different offices of venture capital firms, of startups, of like a startup lawyer. We met so many different people there. Building business in China, we went to Beijing, we went to Shanghai, we met companies there, we saw how businesses actually run, how cultures are so different. Culture is a very, very core subject, so to say, at INSEAD, which is taught very indirectly. You
Mm,
know, you
mm,
learn culture, you live through it. You know, you have through the year, within the 10 months, you have 5 different national weeks that people from different nationalities will happen. They will tell you how business is done there. They'll tell you how food is done there. Like every single thing about different cultures. You know, so we had an Italian week, we did a Desi week ourselves, we had a Spanish week, we had a Lebanese week. You know, so just getting to know and being immersed in different cultures, I think for me that was the best takeaway from the 10 months that we were there.
mm.
And yeah, so I think the way of learning is different,
Yeah, yeah.
so to say. And you know, with INSEAD, and I think with certain other business schools abroad also, it's important to highlight, when companies come to hire you on campus, they do not ask for your GPA because they're not allowed to. Like INSEAD has a non-disclosure policy.
Oh, okay.
Versus at India, unfortunately, I think this is one of the key highlights. Unfortunately, your initial terms are driven a lot by academics, because when companies come to hire you, you have to disclose your GPA, right? So the way you learn is very different. You know, you would want to experience and learn. You would take any courses that you were interested in, versus in India, you would take courses that would help you achieve more marks. That you know, unfortunately, that angle still exists.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think even at the IIMs, if not all terms, I think first 4 terms GPA is indeed put on the resume. In fact,
Yeah,
I remember it's placed there as a badge of honor because a lot of companies day zero as it's called on at the IIMs day zero firms do look at there's almost like an unsaid
yep.
benchmark minimum benchmark. You don't get a 3.2, you're probably not getting a look in on day zero. So
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
you're saying that doesn't happen at INSEAD. So it's more
No, no, we have
guidance.
a non-disclosure policy. We can't, no company can ask us how much we scored. Like, so I think that really helps, honestly, because it helps you focus your MBA and where you really want it to be,
Mhm.
and not on the academics as much. It's not that we don't study, okay? Like, don't get me wrong. It's not like we're not studying. We are studying, but we're just studying in a different way. We're studying to like genuinely learn. Yeah,
Yeah,
we are not pressurized for exams. Uh, you know, you can't score below a certain threshold. That's a school thing. You know, they will put you on like an improvement program or something if you score below a certain threshold. But it's not that, like, I felt, for example, I felt a lot of pressure at ISB in my first 4 months there because of academics.
okay,
Because you know your hiring is going to be based on that. As you said, it's day zero, day one, day two. It's
okay,
it builds a pressure on you.
okay.
Versus the pressure is different. It's not like there's no pressure. The pressure is different because sometimes you need to hustle for your own hiring in abroad business schools, right? There's no day zero, day one, day two concept.
There's no concept of
You have to
academics.
yeah, there's no you have to network, you have to speak to people, you're pushed, like it comes so naturally, Anando, later on, that you would automatically think like that's the way to get a job. Like you have to speak to people, nothing is going to be put on a platter to you, so our focus and our energy is more also in terms of networking, getting to know more alumni, reaching out to recruiters,
Yeah,
um, than solely academia, I would say.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, well, it's interesting that you mentioned, I think in passing you mentioned that it's not like we're not serious, that we're not, in a rush, or we're not under pressure.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it brings to mind, I mean, I don't think anybody going to a B school now is going to be calm and composed, and especially in a 1 year program, because the kind of money that goes into some of these management courses, I don't think you have the choice of sitting back and relaxing. I think ROI perspective means that you're going to be hustling all the time. You're going to be
yeah.
on the feet all the time. But brings me to my next question: how does INSEAD offer any sort of financial aid, especially for international students? Are there any opportunities? Because it's if I compare an MBA to, let's say, an undergrad or a longer program, it's a 3 year, even a PhD or a master's, which is
Yeah.
about 2 years, then most of these programs tend to have funding options. They tend to have research institutes, tend to have opportunities which allow you to fund at least part of your tuition.
Yep.
Was that available? Are there options available in NCR for that, or you just take an education loan?
I did take an education loan, but I also did apply for scholarships.
Mhm.
So I got the Tomorrow's Leaders and the Diversity Fund scholarship at INSEAD.
Oh,
For me, financially, it compensated for the amount I'd spent at ISB, to be honest. But it was definitely helpful. It's See, the thing is, it's not like you're not going to make that 15, 20,000 euros. going on in your career. It's just going to take you longer to pay off your education loan. Yes, but it is definitely helpful, right? It is definitely helpful. It eases out a lot of your burden after graduating and during the year, because living the year is also not a cheap option. It's an expensive year to live, right? So I think overall, like from a perspective of financial aid, yes, scholarships is an option at INSEAD. Uh, yes, you can apply for education loan. We get Prodigy very, very easily. I think Prodigy was started by INSEAD alumni. It's I didn't even speak to anyone. I just applied online, filled up three,
Yeah.
4 forms, and I was given the loan very conveniently.
Yeah.
And the repayment options are also very, very easy. So yeah, I think financially, if I really have to think about it, and now that I'm working for the last 6 months only, but I really see like a lot of value that it came out of the year, right?
Absolutely. I mean, no questions asked in terms of career and the kind of value that, INSEAD brings, both in terms of the brand and the kind of learning that, exposure that you got, like you rightly said. But one last part of your journey that I think I'd like you to throw a little more light on: management consulting, right? When and how did you decide this is what you want to do? I mean, I come from this perspective of most people, in college, whether it's DU or some other college, engineering, economics, commerce. Well,
Hmm.
some of the highest paying jobs on campus tend to be from, the top three firms, the big three, as we call them, right?
Yep, yep,
And consulting is always very, very glamorous, consulting and investment banking. Uh,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, but you tell us surprisingly that you weren't decided about consulting, right?
No,
So
yeah.
what happened? How did this pan out for you?
Um, so it's funny, I did so much research on the school that I didn't know I was entering into a through and through consulting school. like, you know, I was very focused because I told you I was working for a tech startup before, right? And all my essays and all, sometimes you write your essays so seriously that you start believing this is exactly what I want to do. And my essays were very clear. I work for a tech startup. I want to work for like a bigger tech company. So I focus all my energy on Google, Amazon, Microsoft, blah blah blah, and this is my life now. Okay, so focused and so niche.
Hmm.
You go to a business school and you realize you meet so many people. With INSEAD, and I think even ISB is actually quite heavily consulting focused, if I'm not wrong. um, and with INSEAD particularly, there are a lot of sponsored consultants on campus. So some of my very close friends are sponsored consultants. They're coming from a consulting background. The entire MBA is driven a lot around strategy in general, right?
Yeah.
And I think but I did achieve my goals in the summer. So I did my Microsoft in the summer.
Yes.
I was with Microsoft in Singapore as a business program manager for 2 months. And I think after that, when like full-time recruitment starts, is when I was really reflecting on the amount of consulting jobs that are around. And that's the only structured recruitment I feel that happens on campus, consulting. Like it's through and through, like all companies would come, they would have coffee chats with you. It's a very driven process. And I think I was just impressed in general, as you said, like it is, so to say, glamorous from the outside, right? But also just impressed by like the thought process of it. Like a lot of people, and I remember this from my interview, one of the partners said very clearly was a lot of people look at consulting as a 2-year school further, because you
Yeah.
are really developing yourself as a person. So while I could have chosen I could have chosen a Microsoft, so to say, or like focus more on tech again. My work-life balance would definitely be 1,000 times better. And I think I wanted to put myself into a hardcore job life where I learn a lot more. My learning curve is very, very steep, because consulting opens up a lot of opportunities afterwards as well. You don't have to stick around. No, not everybody will make partner, right? A lot of people drop out because you get a lot of good opportunities in the industry. And another thing is, like, when you join consulting, even right after an undergrad or after an MBA, you would join as a generalist.
Hmm.
So for the first 2-3 years, you're not specializing in any industry, right? This is what I love, because I love diversity so much. I've been interested in so many different industries. Like in my undergrad, I did like a pharmaceutical internship, I did a FMCG internship, then I did financial research, then I did technology. So I'm just like, oh, this job is literally giving me the option to
Learn.
explore different industries with different projects. So right now I'm working on a telecom project. I can tomorrow be working on a healthcare project for all I know. Day after tomorrow be working on a retail project, finance project, anything, right? So just the way it opens up your mind is what I think attracted me, and I think what's keeping me also. And the fact that I don't need to decide my specialization just yet. I can explore, because at the end of the day, the core skill set that remains with you is problem solving.
Yeah.
Because every every different industry will have problems. You just need to be smart enough to solve it, need to structure it well. It's common sense. It's not niche knowledge. Like, I don't need to be a bioscience expert here. I'm not going to get in-depth knowledge. It's not niche consulting, right? Versus some firms do that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was the other reason that I find this job very, very exciting, in terms of, at least, like, it's work-life balance is not, is something that consultants don't talk about. It's the same throughout. Like, we work longer hours than usual industry, but
I think
I
most
think
consultants would mask that with, I love to travel. I think I'm very
yeah, with today's world, can't even travel. So
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, but I
yeah,
mean, you're right. I mean, I think the biggest draws, I mean, from all the conversations I've had, diversity of experience. I don't need to focus on one sector, one industry, one problem type. I can look at multiple things, and then, like you say, a school after a school, because you tend to learn a lot more about industries when you work with them. I know right now with the pandemic raging, you're still sitting at home, but most of the time when you're on the
yep,
shop floor sometimes, or
yep.
the on the client side, I think there's plenty more to learn from there. Yeah. Fascinating conversation. This was any parting words of wisdom. I know this audience is second year, third year deciding. I think we've talked about a career, a field that you worked in.
Yeah.
How easy was it adjusting from your background in technology and then consulting? Was that shift easy for you to manage? And in fact, my larger question is, how different was it working in India and working abroad? And right now you're working out of Dubai, but I'm sure
Yep.
there is a difference in the style of working as well, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how was it
100%.
adjusting to that? What came up there? Anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I think the move. So first question, which is technology and consulting. So what I was doing for technology was not hardcore technology, right? Like, I wasn't a product manager or I wasn't an engineer. So I was more on, like, the management side of things anyway. Like, I was managing the company. So I think what's different is more from, like, a startup perspective to, like, a structured firm perspective. I came from, like, a not having too much hierarchy, reaching out to the CEO when needed, running my own show, implementing, being extremely driven by, like, what I have in hand, how can I grow it, a lot of flexibility to, oh, here there is a structure, this is the protocols you follow. Again, there is ownership, there is drive, but it's not as flexible, right? You can't just reach out to imagine the client see you and be like, hey, this is the problem. It's very, very formal. You have to be very, very careful of what you say where. So I think in terms of development skills, they both teach you things differently. And I've learned a great ton from both, or like, even in 6 months, I would say, and I'm pretty sure it's just going to grow from here, from both sides. So it's different skill sets, uh, what's transferable and what stays with you even in another job, I would say, is definitely, like, owning your work and, like, how you break down problems, but more importantly, how do you structure and communicate that. Everything, like, I feel like communication is such an important part of, like, everything that we do, and we put definitely lower value on it because it's communication. Like, we know how to talk, right? Like, but it's so important of, like, how you say, what you say, how you're looking, because I had clients when I was working with the startup as well. How do you communicate to clients? How do you build relationships? Because every single place you'll be building relationships. So I think that's the transferable part of it, for sure. In terms of India and abroad and, like, working, I think in terms of work dynamics, I was already managing a Dutch company in India. I had an internship in the Netherlands before when I was younger. Like, when I was in undergrad, I'd interned in the Netherlands, and then for 2 months, and then even like Microsoft was in Singapore. So I think I had, like, Europe, Middle East, Asia, and India experience, so to say, right? And I think even if it's like a few months, culturally, of course, things are different. The way people work is different. What drives people can be different from region to region. But again, I think what stays constant and where like INSEAD really, really helps, I feel, is easily being able to build these relations and being able to spot the cultural differences and like, oh, this is how this region is. You need to adapt. You need to be flexible with that. And at the end of the day, it's just people trying to get business done. Like it's capitalism to the peak, right? You just need to talk and get the work done, and how you can help each other. People are nice worldwide. Just their way of working, the cross-cultural working is different. And just being able to understand how cross-cultural communities work and being able to adjust in that dynamic easily is, I think, which comes when you put yourself purposely in these situations, because I think we shy away from it sometimes. So if you're getting an opportunity to interact with people from like rest of the world, grab it. It doesn't have to be business. It can be travel. It could be anything. So everything that we do, we get to learn. Like I was speaking to someone earlier, that student was also trying to apply to INSEAD, and his first question was that I see that INSEAD has like international experience is very important, but I don't have any international experience. So maybe I shouldn't apply. And that's when I really want to clarify, like the school definitely looks for international motivation.
Right.
And there's a difference between experience and motivation. And you don't need to have had worked with people. You could be motivated by, oh, I learned a language.
Yeah.
That exposes you to different things. Or I watched like 20 documentaries on XYZ. I'm very excited about this thing in this part of the world, and that's what excites me. Or I took a backpacking trip across, like, I don't know, South America. Or I was a part of a cultural exchange program when I was in school in Germany. It could be like these smaller things that have contributed to like different parts of your life, from like undergrad to high school to like whenever in life. I was born in a different country for all we know, right? That you were exposed to slightly different culture. So it's international motivation, and I think that translates back into the way you work.
Right.
If you ask me.
Right. Right. Very, very, I think, very, very interesting and very, very, I think, relevant piece of information that you said in terms of specifically applying to INSEAD, but also in general, making up your application to an Ivy League school means that you need to consider these multiple aspects. But more importantly, I think your message to all the students is loud and clear. Communicate, whether it's within your immediate circles, your seniors, faculty members, communicate, and that communication stays with you. I think the manner in which you communicate and how much you derive value out of it stays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think beautiful words to sort of round off this discussion. I think that's all I have to ask you for today. I think that was the agenda that we'd set for ourselves. Well, in case any parting words of advice to the students, or should we just open it up?
Not particularly. I think I just want to highlight particularly with respect to INSEAD, but I think it deploys back to a lot of other business schools as well. I want to quickly summarize what the school looks for when they're looking at candidates. And like I already highlighted, the international motivation versus experience part. So international motivation is one of the things when you're applying abroad, but there is the other three things that we look at. And if you look at the website, the admission committee talks about this. The second is your leadership potential. And when we are younger, we sometimes think that, oh, schools want us to be leaders. How do we show that, right? Yeah. Like we've never led a team before or whatnot. So I think from the leadership potential part, again, it's your potential to lead, not your potential to lead, but not like, oh, I've led a team of like 10 people already. So I think it's very important to be like, oh, how could have I led? Like, oh, I was a part of this dance team, or I was a part of, like I was the head of like student council, or I was doing XYZ for a volunteer perspective. How have I led? And leading is not 20 people, 10 people. Leading is how you've led even in a normal team, your team itself. People can be the same level when you're leading. And then your ability to contribute comes again from like, the different perspectives of what your passions are, where you resonate with life. And then I put academic ability as the last point. So, that is, of course, your GMAT score, your undergrad score, your high school scores. It's very number driven, and, the subjects that you studied or whatnot. So these are the four things that normally, at least INSEAD looks at, I'm sure, are relevant to a lot of different schools.
Right. Wonderful, wonderful. That was uh, very interesting. Well, the floor is open for all of your questions. I'm sure you have tons of questions to ask Mansi about her journey, about applying to INSEAD, you know, ISB, anything else under the sun. I think we've got, the next few minutes. And let me see if I'm getting any questions. All right. Here's a question that Yogita is asking Mansi. She says, how much leadership experience does an institute look for, right? And I mean, an interesting choice of words, how much? Well, over to you,
Can
Mansi.
you clarify when you say institute, like which institute?
Well, I guess you can answer from an INSEAD perspective or an ISB perspective.
Yep. So again, I think what I just said about leadership, right? Like again, what INSEAD looks at is leadership potential, not leadership experience. It's the same thing. Your ability to lead in the future, your ability to be a global leader, and your leadership could come from, like as I just mentioned, from different areas and walks of life, right? When you look at ISB, they also take in, like as Anand said in the beginning, YLPs. So you might not have had any experience, and if for example you're applying after 2 years of experience, it's obvious you've not, it's not normal to have led people in 2 years of work experience. Like it's totally normal that you wouldn't have done that, but you can show leadership potential by, like, hey, you know what, I took up this project that was out of my domain, for example, or hey, I started this in my company because I thought there was a need to develop something, so I led, but in a different manner. So you're not expected to be doing a CEO's job at 23, 24, 25, right? So it's totally normal to not have leadership experience. It's very, very, very important to have leadership potential. Yeah. So leadership potential can come from so many walks of life, and so many examples are there. How you operate in your life in general, day-to-day basis, how you did college, how you did your first job. And I think with INSEAD, yes, I think the average experience is a lot more. So like working experience. A lot of people have led teams, yes, because it particularly asks you number of people you've led. But I had a zero over there. I hadn't led anybody directly, that's okay.
Okay.
That, I don't think that makes or breaks your application till the time you show the potential to do it in the future.
Right. Right. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Well, I have another question here from Tanveer. Tanveer says, I'm going to paraphrase this question. He's saying that, so in 2018, you've worked with, you worked with S&P, you've done the research work, and then you've worked with a startup, Dutch firm, like you said. What motivated you to apply to a foreign B school, right? Was it the opportunity to go work outside? Was it the opportunity to study in a global environment? Was your thought at that point in time to come back, or was it to settle abroad? Like, what were the motivations going through your head at that point?
Yeah, I wasn't looking at coming back, to be honest. And I don't plan my life very well in terms of, hey, 2 years later, I want to come back to India. I like to live life with, like, as it's coming, like to make decisions closer to time. Right now, I'm very happy in Dubai. At that time, I didn't know which geography I was going to go to be honest. I had no idea. I liked Singapore, I liked Dubai, I like London. But also, that's the way I live my life. So it's very, very important to, I think, understand yourself in, like, I like to live my life with experiences. Like, I'm very, very driven by, like, oh, if I go to INSEAD, I'm going to experience XYZ things. I'm going to experience another culture. I was very sure I didn't want to come back to India for sure. But I just wanted to work abroad, grow my career in a different geography, more as to do with global leadership, so to say, just open avenues around the world for me to explore opportunities around the world. So I think very easily that led me to it. There's no overthinking in the process at all but yeah, I think you can also have an international career. For example, with ISB, I have a ton of people who went to Singapore working with Grab or with, Facebook maybe, and some people in Dubai also are from my ISB cohort. So I think it's, you can tap onto it. It's just opportunity wise, you will have lesser opportunity to go abroad compared to it at INSEAD, of course.
All right. All
I
right.
don't know if that answers the question.
It does. It does. I mean, it does at
Yeah.
least expose us to, it tells us what went through your mind because every person is different.
Yeah.
Okay? So we all
Yeah.
plan our life differently, and you're saying you love to live in the moment, not think too far
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
Uh,
2 year planning is good for me, Anand.
I think most of us tend to be in that zone. I mean, if we want to be really honest, I don't think we
Yeah.
think 5, 10 years in the future. But having said
But
that,
all schools will ask you about what are your long-term plans and what are your 5 year plans. So it's so important to like have an idea, but also okay to, be okay with what you're writing in your application is not going to translate to reality.
yeah, I mean, I guess the way I look at it is that I have a plan and inclination right now, but that evolves, right? It doesn't stay static. So 5 years
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
line could change once I've crossed two of those.
Yeah.
So in a sense,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I have, I think Abhishek and Avinash are asking me similar questions, so I'm going to club them together. Both of them seem to ask. So we're in the final year of our college. I think economics, or BB. I'm not sure which program both of them are doing, but final year of college. The question they have is, we're considering MBA, we're looking at CAT, we're looking at GMAT, and then there's job, right? So what should we do? I mean, it's one of those classic tough questions to ask. Should I prep for CAT and not worry about job? Should I go for a job, not worry about CAT right now? What should I
Yeah.
do, right? And I'm very tempted to pitch in, but I'll wait for you to first give it your thoughts.
There's no one direct answer. Uh, I mean, I don't know much about their backgrounds, of course, like just doing economics isn't sufficient enough. And I don't know what their career goals are, which geography, which part of the world, what industry, what function, where do they see their lives moving towards. There's so many missing parts, unfortunately, that there is no direct answer. And at this point, with respect to, what you should be doing, like really, like there's so many, like speak to people who are doing both. Definitely speak to people who are doing both. Ask yourselves multiple questions of where you learn more, where you grow as an individual more. Fill in those gaps a little bit, and I would definitely say like do things out of your comfort zone at this age, because that's only going to help you later on.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, if I was to chip in, I'd add that I think there are multiple factors that would probably determine what should be done. But for sure, you should look at multitasking. You should look at, seek out that job, the best job that you can get from campus through your own sources. But do not, ignore the CAT option, the higher education option as well. Unless you're already decided that you don't want to do an MBA or a master's, keep that option alive. I mean, we're sitting in the month of May right now. CAT is months away. I think you can start your
I did both.
preparation now
Yeah.
and sort of try to manage both. But and again, this is the risk of doing two things all at once, is that you tend to lose sight, you tend to lose focus. So always keep one as the primary option. I mean, decide which one are you more excited about. Is it, pursuing an MBA right now, or is it I think I won't say working, I think exploring a career, right? I think that's more what you do in your first couple of jobs right after college is more gain experience, try to find out, do I like doing this or not? Is this an industrial sector or a role that I want to be in or not? So I think that experience really counts for a lot. So short answer, try both. All right. Okay, this is Tushar. Tushar is also a student of BBE. He says he's pursuing a CFP alongside the business economics that he's studying. He's also a national level chess player. I think he's trying to show off now. No, but I think
No, no.
the point he's trying to make up is that he's worked on his diversity angle. He's worked on multiple skill sets angle, and he's also a derivatives trader now, right? Algorithmic trading is what he does, right? Well, stop showing off, man. But anyhow, so he's asking us, and this is a very good question actually. He's saying that for somebody who's just passing, college now, MBA is not really something that is on the cards because experience and all notwithstanding, and doesn't have much of that. How does a manage a master in finance, an MFin course in the top 10 options across the world? How would you rate those kind of options? Right? Are they good enough or not?
Around the world, like masters in finance, right?
Masters in finance. We're
Um,
talking about probably an LBS or schools
yeah, yeah.
in UK. Although it's
See, I
more of
know a
a
few
Europe.
people who've gone and done like an extra course, like right after their undergrad. Um, I think what in my opinion, I didn't do it myself, but in my opinion, or whatever I've seen of doing a master's right after your undergrad abroad,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is also like a stepping stone in terms of opening up opportunities in different regions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think if you are very sure you want to go out, uh, you already know that you want an international career, you already know you're very, very interested in finance.
Yep.
I think it's a good shot to consider. Speak to people who are doing masters in finance. Use LinkedIn, like overuse LinkedIn to see what their careers look like 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later. Does that resonate with you? It is possible after doing masters in finance, after 5 years of working in some other firm, you might consider an MBA at that time. But that's a thing of the future. I think right now, I really, really would use exploiting LinkedIn to the best to understand what people of what you're thinking are doing. And if that excites you, if you're like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. Oh yeah, this person is doing this financial job in New York. Like, I really want to do that. Yes, definitely, And at the end of the day, I think like whatever course that you do abroad, be it an MBA, be it an MIM, be it a master's in finance, economics, anything, your opportunities are going to be driven by how you drive it, like what you push for, because when you go abroad, unlike India, they're not going to be offering things on the plate. You will have to network, you'll have to speak to people, you will have to get a job based on what you're doing that time. And it is possible, right? All of this is possible.
Right.
So it's exciting. I think consider it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I mean, I agree completely with your verdict on that, because I mean, if you're really, really serious about finance and getting into the core financial markets, let's say in London or in New York, I think a 1 year master's in finance is an excellent opportunity. Gets you a look into some of these markets. Also, I think some of these specialized masters also look at your background. So kudos on doing those derivatives trading and algorithmic trading that you're currently doing. But bear in mind that I think the only, I guess, drawback, and again, one more plus, by the way, which we didn't talk about, is that the cost is substantially lower for a master's program as compared to an MBA. Because I mean, we're talking about a multiple of at least 2 or 3, right? Which means that an MBA is at least going to be 3 times or 2 times as costly as masters is. So it's not very expensive on your wallet. You can even consider an MBA, like Mansi pointed out, 5 years down the line. But right now, it gives you that foothold into the financial services market abroad. So great opportunity. I think you should completely go for it. Um, well, again, open-ended question from Yukta here. She's saying, how much work experience do we need before applying? And again, I don't think there's a simple answer to this.
All schools have it on their websites, the average work experience. Do not take that number as this is what I need or this is what I need to have. This is the average. Yeah, there are people with much lower, there are people with much more. So look at the average, speak to the alumni of that school to know what the actual range is of the fit of the size. Like ISB would be very different from INSEAD, would be very different from Harvard. So all of them have a different range of people who go through. And yeah, just speak to people and look at websites, research. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think research is actually critical, because but then I mean, I think I'd just add that maybe take those published numbers with a pinch of salt, because most of them tend to be averages. I think the only humble submission I'll have is that while even an ISB, for example, the prevailing thought is that you need at least 2.5 years at least worth of experience in order to get a look in. But yes, while that's largely true, there are known cases of people with 1.5 years of experience also getting in. But then, I mean, I think what tips you also need to evaluate what would tip the scales in your favor. Is there has to be something else in your profile that really does stand out, creates that impact on the AdCom. Because without that extra spark, I think you're going to fall short. So long story short, well, check out the websites, go with the average numbers, but then also evaluate your profile along the way. Well, I think people are getting tired because yeah, not getting too many questions. I guess we've already covered those questions in the course of this webinar. Well, uh, Thanks for your time, Mansi. I think this was very, I found it very, very interesting, very, very enriching. I certainly hope that the others attending this webinar also did. Well, I hope that we can bring you in, a couple of years later to tell us more about consulting in a global perspective. But yeah, but do stay connected with us, and yeah, I guess some of these attendees will probably reach out to you on a personal level too. Uh,
Sure.
Wonderful. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to wrap this session up. Uh, Thank you for your time. Thank you everybody for joining us today. And do give in, do visit our website. That's www.mentorscapital.com. I did make this announcement. I'm going to repeat this. We are offering a free one-to-one session with a mentor of your choice on our website. So do visit, do check out the mentor profiles there, and start your one-to-one mentorship, journey today. Well, that's my time. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great weekend, and please do be safe and indoors in these very tough times. Thank you, Mansi, and have a great week, month, and year ahead, and hope to stay in touch.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.